Welcome to DCC HASS Media Studio. This is where you'll find yourself when you come into DCC in the back door and you come down the stairs and you take a hard right as if you're going to the photography studio. You'll find yourself all of a sudden in this little cul-de-sac hallway. And over here is 176A, which is the HASS Media Studio. And over here is our production studio, 174, where we have do all the recording, where all the fun happens. You walk in the front door here. This is where you'll end up, right here by where a lot of the equipment is that we use to record stuff. So I'm going to basically sort of talk you through just a little bit about some of the rules of our studio, and these also generally apply to pretty much the rules of almost any studio. Some of this is going to come off as being kind of like, yeah, duh, I already know that. I'm going to just basically assume that most of you know a little bit about this, but don't know a lot about it. So we're going to sort of take it from the beginning here about some basic studio stuff that you should know anyway, and definitely the studio stuff you need to know about our studio here at RPI. Let's just have a look around the room real quick. I'm going to show you the room here. I'm just going to get behind the camera here, and I'm just going to sort of, that's the front door, and then as we go to the left here, you can see this is our ISO booth back there. And here's going back to the window for the control room. Oh, you can see there's the control room. We have a lovely piano here. Some larger stands for video. We have also this curtain here in the corner, which makes for a very good deadener for recording. And then we have some pretty good sound treated walls here. Some nice lovely chairs. Let's go back around here. All right, just to give you the full 360 maneuver here. And back to over here where all the fun is. Back to over here where all the fun is. So stop kicking things. Let's back up here. So the first thing I want to sort of get into is just some really basic stuff here, folks. And the number one thing probably you may have heard of is this idea of over-under cables. Most of you probably have coiled a cable or two in your tie, and you probably just sort of coil them up and just wrap them up and maybe tie them up and boom, job done. In the studio, however, we have to do things a little differently, at a little more high level of dealability. So the first thing we do is this idea of the over-under cable, because if we just sort of wrap a cable, naturally it'll end up coiling up and it'll sort of have a memory of its own, of a coiled state. If I throw this cord out, I want to be able to just go all the way out easily, like that, no problem. It just goes right out, it doesn't knot up, except for that one knot right there at the very beginning, but for the most part this thing just went right out the way we wanted it to. So how do we do over-under cable? Let's show you how to do this. Okay, first of all, take cable and have the end sort of facing you like this in your hand, in your palm of your hand, like so. So it's kind of facing you and the cord's like this. We're going to take our fingers like this and we're going to turn the cable over. We're going to sort of go over. Do the first loop. The next loop though, we're going to bring our hand down and we're going to curl it under. And we're going to sort of curl it with our fingers under. So now that we have a second loop that's under, then we're going to do the next loop over, and then under again, over, under, over, under, and then the last one should be over. And then when you get the cord out, and you pull the cord out and you get the little Velcro thing open, you want to pick the end of the cord that's already sort of coming off the side, not the one that's sort of looped underneath. And if you do that, you hold that end of the cord, and you throw the rest of this cord out, boom, and it hit the other wall over there, and it's perfect. It doesn't have any knots in it. And I'll show you that one more time. Once again, got the cable, got the end of it in my hand, thusly. Grab this. I'm going to go over, put it in my hand, and I come over here. I'm going to twist under, put it in my hand, over, under, let me do that under again, over, and we're just twisting it back and forth. We're twisting the cable back and forth in our fingers, under, last time over, And again, we have our cord like this. We pick the line that's on the out end, and then we can throw the rest of that cord, and it'll just go right out. So that's the whole point of over-under, is it stores better, it doesn't have a memory of being coiled up, and we can pull that cord out and just toss it, and it's going to go exactly where we want it to go, and that's why we do it. So, over-under, that's one of the things we would like you to do in our studio as well. Alright. Alright, so in the studio we have some nice headphones here, and we are basically Sony headphones. They fold right up. So the one thing that we want to make sure you don't do in this studio is wind the cord around the headphones. Do not do this. We will be very upset with you, and you shouldn't do this in any studio. This is just bad studio etiquette. What you want to do is fold up the headphones, put the headphones in the bag first, then take the rest of this cord and just sort of grab it and gather it in your hand and put it in the bag on top of it, like so. Don't wrap it around the headphones. People that do that end up with very, very gnarly headphones. They just get nasty. It's like, trust me, it gets nasty. Don't do that. All right, so that's headphones. Some stand etiquette that we need to sort of observe in our studio, and that is, here's our pretty much our classic stand. All right, so loosen it. Make sure it goes all the way down. Doesn't sort of end up all part way down. And then tighten it. What you do not want is the bottom of this touching the ground like this. We don't want that. No, we want that not touching the ground, all the way up and tightened up. Then, the other thing we do not ever want to do is just grab these things and wrench them. We want to loosen them up and then move it, because it really wears out the little sort of grabbers there. We don't want to do that. So if we set up a stand, the other thing that we always want to do is make sure that the boom is positioned over a leg. So that way the weight of the microphone is leaning over a leg of the tripod. So we want to make sure we do that. Very good. And then let's thread something here. Let's say we have our clip here for a microphone. What I don't recommend doing is taking this and just going like this, like that. Some of these little clips are easier to do that than others. What I do is I loosen it here, and we're going to tighten from the base. Just hold that clip there, tighten it on there. Boom, done. Tighten this up. We then want to make sure on any given stand, when we have a microphone that's going to be on, that every aspect of it is tightened up. So there's no loose ends to it. Everything is exactly what it should be, and then we can put our microphone on that and be very safe. Microphones are expensive. We do not want to have to replace them. So one of the ways that we show our love for the microphones is by treating the stands right and doing that kind of stuff right. Okay, another thing I need to mention about our studio here is that when we prop the doors, we don't use little wedges or anything. What we do is we have sandbags for that purpose. So what we'll do is we'll just basically sandbag the doors whenever we need to. We got lots of these around here, so just the reason why we do that is because the doors have sealants on the bottom of them that we can wreck if we use little wedges. So we want to use sandbags on all the doors anytime we want to do any stuff like that. We have a Mac Pro, and it's running Pro Tools. We do have the ability to also run Ableton and Reaper, but at this present time, we don't have it working with the S6 because we have the S6 oriented to Pro Tools using Pharaonic Deep Freeze. And at some point later, we will probably develop this so that we end up having both of those other DAWs in here, but we're kind of a one DAW thing right now, trying to keep it simple. If we try to teach too many DAWs at the same time, things get kind of freaky. Don't need to do that. So we have Pro Tools here. We have the Mac. And just a couple things I sort of want to sort of mention about this. The S6 here, this console that we're looking at right here, this, although it has faders and knobs and all kinds of cool stuff on it, there's no audio that passes through this device whatsoever. This is strictly, basically a big MIDI unit. think of this as a large mouse for the computer. We can control our DAW and aspects of our DAW using this surface, this control surface, but there's no audio actually going through this. We can actually do everything we need to do right here and actually bypass this, except for the monitoring section, because we monitor the S6 and monitor through this section right here. This is a very important aspect of the S6 is right here. The control room monitoring area here and the talkback area here for when we're starting to have people on the floor. So this is right here to the bottom right of the touch screen on the S6. And you'll see here that we have dim and cut for the control room monitor. We have a level here we can adjust to, main speakers, and then our alternative speakers for the focals. So we have these two buttons that we can go for, and our dim and cuts. Then our talkback mic, from when we're talking to people on the floor, we use the talkback mic and push down on that. This is where you're going to be using most of the stuff on the S6 that you have to use. And we'll be getting into this a little bit more as we go along. We're working in Pro Tools, and we do have some protocols as far as how we're going to be storing things. We have a user drive on that we have here on the computer, and usually the user drive stays pretty. We kind of leave that alone, so you can actually leave some things on the user drive, but you can't rely on that. The user drive will get occasionally cleaned out, and it'll probably happen when you really least need it to happen. So the main thing that we have to do in this studio is you always have to have your own drive, and you plug your own drive into this right here, and you operate Pro Tools from your drive. Because this also, if we do that, then that allows us to use the entire Mac Pro for all of the plugins, for all the aspects of the DAW, and it frees up a lot more space if we can run our programs from your drive. So make sure that you plug in to this before you start working in here. The protocols that we have here is that any file that you create, you must have your name on it, and it has to have a title on it and have some sort of information about it. We can't, anything that's sort of found on the drive that just sort of doesn't really seem to have a purpose, it will be eliminated at some point. We don't have indefinite room for everything. So just Pro Tools with an S6. We have two sets of speakers here. We have the focals, and we have a set of Genelecs. We have 8 Genelecs in a circle in this room, plus we have a subwoofer for that, so we can do 7.1 or 8.0 in here, or 5.1 or 5.0 if you prefer. We have the technology for that. But we have two really good different monitoring situations here, so we can listen. Some other things I should mention also, we have our red boxes here, like this one right here. If we want to have headphone mixes on the floor and just pretty much whatever mix is on Pro Tools, we can just feed that out to the floor. Everybody just gets the same mix. You can have 4 headphones into one of these boxes. It's a very straightforward way for us to get recording and listening. But we also have these avioms, which we'll show you a little later on, which these things right here. And this gives us 16 channels of headphones, and we can now do our own personal headphone mixes in the studio, and that's really easy to do here too. So we have 2 very easy ways to do monitoring, plus the monitoring of the speakers here in the console room. So once we get our mic on the stand, we get the stand tightened up, we have a nice cord ready to go. What do we do with it? We plug it into one of these patch points that we have in the studio. And on the main floor here, we have 4 of them. We have this one here, and I'll show you again these other 4 that we have. And we got that one, and we got this one over here, that one, and last but certainly not least, that one over there. So let's get in here and take a quick look at what's really going on here. On the top row there, we have M9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have M9 through 16. Those are single or double digit numbers, and then the row underneath that are triple digits, 109, 110, and so forth. This top row of microphone lines, all of these go straight to a preamp, our MTX-R preamp. So these go to a preamp in Pro Tools and then can be recorded. We have 40 lines we can use for that. And then the bottom ones, the ones underneath here, these go up to places on the patch bay, and then we can reroute these to any of these here that we want to inside. We have 40 inputs across the whole room here, And then we have all these different other inputs we can use, and then use the patch bay to put those into one of our 40 preamps. We also have some really cool stuff here. We have instrument lines, speaker lines, lots of ways we can move information around the studio in these patch bay points. I should also mention that right here, our ISO booth that I'm looking at right here next to the door, there's also a patch point in there, and we can do all the stuff that's in here in there as well. So we have one ISO booth as well as our console room here. I've got my SM58 on my stand, which has been tightened in every possible way. I've got the boom over the leg, like I like it. I got my cord here. Let's see if I could toss this line out, if it's going to do what we want it to do. Boom, nice. So I got a nice line here, ready to go. Let's plug it in. All right. Another thing that we like to do is just make sure that we dress our cables here in the studio. So I'll bring this around just one time. I don't want to wrap it around. You don't have to wrap it around the stand super a bunch of times. It's just crazy. More unwrapping to do later. Just once or twice is nice. Get it down to the bottom here. Let's get our line over here. If we want to go ahead and put this into a preamp, then we want to plug it into one of these top ones here. Or as I mentioned before earlier, I can plug it into one of these bottom ones, but I have to use the patch bay to plug it in to one of my double digits. So I'm going to pick right here, number 9. Number 9. And then the other thing I'm going to really kind of ask you to do here is dress the cables at the base. So what I do is I do a little over-under myself right here at the base of the cable, and so that is nice and neat. And we don't have a lot of cables just like willy-nilly about the studio. Neatness counts, especially when you start having, I don't know, 40, 45 cables out and about, so we want to take good care of all these things. So I've got a microphone plugged into my panel. Let's go inside and see if we can get the mix of sound. So, Pro Tools opened up, make one track, and I've got my microphone out there. Let's just see if I can't get it to come in here. So on this track right now, I have my mic preset up right over here. And if I click on this, I get a little fader, which sort of, I can set the gain on that microphone. But first, let me make sure I'm getting the right place. If I go to I have my I/O here, my input and my output. Output's going to the monitor, live 1 and 2. And my input, if I click down on this, I get all of my inputs that are all across the floor, all of my 40 inputs that I get for preamps. Some of them are in the ISO booths, and the rest of them are all scattered across my live floor. So I've got my microphone plugged into number 9. And so I'll set this to number 9. I have it on number 9. And I set the level on it, and I'll put it in record. And I should be able to get a level here at this point. So if I go out there and make some noise, you'll probably hear it. So in fact, let me just go do that right now. I'll be right back. Watch this space. Check 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 2, mic check 1 2. So I get my input coming in here, I get my output going to the monitor, and I've got a track going, and I can record in here. And I really don't even need the S6 except for the monitoring. So I'm in pretty good shape. One thing that's very important in this studio, in any studio though, and that is that you must always name things. And name them quickly. I also advise you to do this. Name them soon. For instance, I have a track here that is named Audio 1. If I record something on that track, that clip will now be called Audio 1. Friends, do not let your tracks be called Audio 1. Immediately call this whatever it is. In this case, you just double click on the name, and this window will come up, and we'll call this, it's a 58. Call it 58 microphone. Return, and now we have a name for that. And when we make clips, we will generate names based on that henceforth. This is very important because trying to recall things and try to find tracks later, you need to have proper naming. Let's say that we recorded this thing and we're good to go. It's time to save it and to store it. All right, so we're in Pro Tools. We're going to go up to the top here. We'll go to File and Save, and do a Save As. So we can save it somewhere. There's this aspect of Save As. Save As. This then gives us a place to save it. You will save it onto your drive. Do not save it to the user drive unless you just absolutely have an emergency, but you will have your drive. You will save the session to your drive. And you'll save that as the name of the session. If it's an assignment for this class, you will have the name of the assignment and your name in that name of that file. So it's very important to name things, very important to name them properly. We will be always on top of you for doing that in this class, so please get in the good habit. One thing I do want to mention at this point, and we'll mention it again, is you may have noticed that the 58 did not require phantom power. What is phantom power? We will talk about phantom power, but certain microphones require phantom power, certain microphones don't. The 58 is a dynamic, it doesn't need it. A condenser mic, however, requires phantom power, so we have to send 48 volts to that, and in which case I would then turn on this 48V button on my preamp, and thusly I would light that up and make sure that microphone is getting fed phantom power. So why am I telling you this now? Well, because what will happen very frequently is if we're using the patch bay at all, and if we have phantom power going on, we can have ourselves a little power arc. So what I want to just get in your mind now is that when you are finished using phantom power on a track, to turn off the phantom power from that track, from that microphone, before you use the patch bay. These are some of the basic elements of our studio that we have here. We'll get into a lot more stuff as we go along, and we'll make it so it's possible for you when you do come back to campus that you can walk into the studio and use it just like you've been using it for years. That's really the whole point of a lot of what I'm going to be trying to do for the next few videos, is give you that kind of a familiarity and give you that kind of confidence and just the important information that we need you to know about how to use the studio and to make it so it's good for everybody, and we can keep using it and improving it and making it a cool place to make music happen and record stuff. All right, thanks a lot.